A week with no blood of my blood? But that doesn't mean we don't have any new info about what's going to happen in the season finale. Starz had released a preview last week, and I did a breakdown of that. But there's also a new one I saw on Outlander's Facebook account, and it shows new scenes like Ellen on her wedding day. I'll also go into a more detailed look at some of the things we had from last week, some Easter eggs and confirmation about something that we had all guessed. Ellen and Brian running away together. Let's discuss it all first. We should go over some of the details of the Episode 10 preview, and then move on to the new stuff from the latest trailer. The Episode 10 preview starts with scenes of Julia and Henry in the future, right before they accidentally time travel. As a couple, they decide to go to Ines as a sort of escape. They buy train tickets. And there's this incredible little Easter egg on the tickets that I hadn't noticed last week when I looked again. I couldn't believe it. If you look closely, the ticket numbers literally say 1714, which is the year they end up traveling to. I love that they included this magical little detail. Another thing worth noting about the Julia and Henry scenes in the trailer is that for the first time, we will see Claire and Uncle Lamb together when she was 5. We've seen and loved the grown-up version of her in Outland Wonder, but seeing her as a child excites me so much. We also never got much info on Uncle Lamb, so I'm curious to see what kind of person he is. Episodes 9 and 10 are both written by Diana Gabaldon, so the dialogue scenes will be especially important and emotional, as we discussed last week. There are also a few men following Brian in the comments of that video. There were different theories about who could have sent them. My theory was that it was Colum, because when he promised Ellen he wouldn't harm or order anyone to kill Brian, he added the phrase "from this point onwards," which felt like a sneaky loophole. I think he had already ordered those men to kill Brian, which is why he could easily make that promise later. Some believe it could be Simon Fraser after that horrible scene in Episode 9, though I doubt Simon would kill his own son. Others suggested Uncle Grant, who might have learned about Ellen's love for Brian, but we have no evidence of that. Another theory is that Dougal could be behind it, since he already knew about Elon's feelings, though I think Dougal would have handled it himself rather than ordering others. In this trailer, we see Murtagh and Brian finally making up, because Murtagh believes the kind of love Brian and Ellen share is unique. Seeing how deeply Brian loves Ellen, he decides to help him fight off the men so Brian can save Ellen on her wedding day to Malcolm Grant. Malcolm looks furious in one of the scenes. Likely when he learns Ellen has run away, his uncle seems just as enraged, saying things like this will be paid in blood. It seems this conversation happens after Ellen escapes with Brian. As for Henry and Julia, they agreed to meet in front of Castle Leathers, where Julia would run away with little William. The trailer shows Simon Fraser and his man Bollock going after Julia. This probably happens because of the brothel worker, who either fell in love with Henry or became dangerously attached to him. She overheard Henry and Julia talking about their meeting point, so it's likely she warned Simon Fraser or his men about their plan to escape. We see Henry arrive at the meeting point, Julia there with William, and Julia shouting, "Help me." It seems like a trap, though it's hard to tell exactly what happens. Even if they manage to escape and reach the stones for time travel, we don't know if they realize they need gemstones to do it. Will they have anything that allows them to travel through time? Some fans believe they'll time travel at the end of Episode 10 and appear in Outlander Season 8. That seems too far-fetched to me. I'd love for Claire to meet her parents, but this approach wouldn't make sense. The trailer released on Outlander's Facebook account actually shows Ellen in her wedding attire, with her veil fully covering her face. Very suspicious. Could this be a false bride? Maybe someone like Mrs. Fitz is under the veil to buy Ellen and Brian more time to run away. It's hard to imagine how Brian could get Kayland out of there when she's already standing beside Malcolm in front of the priest. Do you think a false bride scene will happen? The trailer also adds more lines between Brian and Murtagh as they discuss Ellen's situation. It's clear Brian will stop the wedding before it happens or steal the bride before she's promised to Malcolm Grant. Episode 10 is called Something Borrowed. While the Something Borrowed, Something Blue tradition dates to the 19th century, which might not fit the time period, I think the title refers to Brian borrowing the bride, as teased earlier. We do know Brian and Ellen will run away. If you've checked the Blood of My Blood Season 1 soundtrack, the penultimate song is called The Bothy. A bothy is a small shelter, often left unlocked for anyone to use in remote parts of Scotland. Since there's a 7-minute track with that title, it likely means Brian and Ellen will take refuge in an abandoned building after running away. What do you think about this theory? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to share your own ideas below. If you want to watch something about Outlander Season 8, check out the next video. Blood ties can be powerful. But when loyalty is tested and secrets rise to the surface, family becomes the sharpest weapon of all. Episode 10 of Blood of My Blood doesn't just give us drama, it throws us into a storm where every look, every choice, and every word carries a hidden meaning. This isn't just another episode. This is the turning point that will change everything moving forward. Section 1. Quick recap of episode build-up before episode 10 erupts with chaos. We need to understand the pressure that's been building since the very beginning of the season. Every moment has been leading to this explosion. Think back to the strained alliances, the whispered promises, and the betrayals disguised as kindness. Episode 9 left us hanging on the edge, where characters who once stood side by side now look at each other with suspicion in their eyes. The trust that once held this family together is cracking, and episode 10 takes that crack and rips it wide open. The opening minutes feel like standing in the silence. Before a thunderstorm, the air is heavy, the tension is thick, and the audience knows something devastating is coming. Each character carries the weight of their decisions like invisible chains. The eldest carries the guilt of choices made long ago, decisions that are now haunting every step forward. The younger ones carry anger, frustration, and an ache to break free from the shadows they've been forced to live in. Together, they create a storm of emotions that is ready to clash. What makes this build-up so important is the way it shapes our understanding of episode 10. Nothing in this series happens without reason. The writers plant seeds in quiet conversations and subtle glances, in the way a character's hand shakes when they pour a drink, or the way someone lingers too long before answering a simple question. These details aren't filler. They are the silent alarms warning us of what's coming. By the time we reach episode 10, every seed has grown into a thorn, and now those thorns are cutting deep into the very people we thought were unbreakable. Episode 9 ended on a cliffhanger that left fans shouting at their screens. Who could be trusted? Who was truly loyal? Who was playing a long game in the shadows? These questions carried us into episode 10. And they are the same questions that this episode tears apart and throws back in our faces with ruthless precision. The characters are no longer just reacting. They are actively fighting for control, for power, and for survival. The build-up wasn't just about tension. It was about pulling the rug from under us so that when episode 10 began, we were already off balance, already unsettled, already desperate to know how far things would go. This is why episode 10 feels so intense. It's not just a random set of shocking moments. It's the careful layering of drama that started episodes ago. Like a game of chess, every piece has been moved into position. The betrayals, the silences, the sacrifices, all of it was preparing us for this breaking point. And now that the board is set, episode 10 makes its move. And it's a move that no one sees coming. Section 2, the opening scene. Break down the very first frame of episode 10 tells us everything without saying a single word. The camera doesn't rush, it lingers. Shadows stretch across the floor and silence hums louder than any scream. That's the power of this opening. It doesn't explode in your face, it creeps under your skin. The creators know that the scariest moments are not always the loud ones, but the quiet ones, when you can almost hear your own heartbeat echoing in the space. Between words, we see the house once a place of warmth, now a battlefield of unspoken truths. The table, usually filled with laughter or arguments that end with forgiveness, now sits cold and empty, like a reminder of what's been lost. There's a weight in the air, a tension so thick that it makes every step sound like thunder. It's as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for the storm to break. This opening is not just about setting a location. It's about creating an atmosphere that tells us nothing will be the same after this. The first character who enters the frame doesn't speak immediately. Instead, they pause. They hesitate. And in that hesitation, the audience knows something has changed inside them. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's the heavy knowledge of what's about to come. This pause is a weapon because silence can speak louder than dialogue. The camera lingers on their face, showing cracks in their confidence. The person we thought was unshakable now looks fragile, human, vulnerable. And that's how episode 10 hooks us. It's by showing us that strength can crumble in a single moment. But the opening isn't just about characters, it's about the small details. Hidden in plain sight. The lighting, for example, isn't bright and clean. It's dim, almost suffocating, like the world itself is closing in. Every shadow seems to stretch longer than it should, as if hinting that there are forces at work beyond what we see. Even the sound design plays a role. There's no loud music, no dramatic cue. Instead, there's the faint sound of wind outside. The creak of floorboards, the almost inaudible sound of someone's breath catching in their throat. These sounds aren't random. They are chosen to pull us deeper into the tension, to make us feel like we are in that room, waiting for something to happen. When the first line of dialogue finally comes, it doesn't roar, it whispers. And that whisper cuts deeper than any shout could. The words are simple, but the weight behind them is enormous. It's not what is said, but how it is said. With hesitation, with fear, with a sense that the person speaking knows they are about to ignite something they can't control. This is the brilliance of episode 10's opening. It doesn't give us action right away. It builds dread like a slow heartbeat. Steady, heavy, unavoidable. The camera then shifts, showing us two characters facing each other across the room. Their distance says more than any words could. They stand apart, like two armies preparing for war. Their eyes lock, and in that stare, the entire history of their relationship is revealed. Every betrayal, every sacrifice, every hidden truth, it all hangs in the silence between them. The audience doesn't need a flashback. The tension in their gaze is enough to remind us of everything they've been through. And we know one of them is about to break. What makes this opening scene unforgettable is how it plays with our expectations. We've been trained to wait for explosions, gunshots, screaming matches, but instead, episode 10 begins with something more dangerous: quiet honesty. Because in this silence, there's nowhere to hide. Every word feels like a knife, every pause like a wound that refuses to close. The atmosphere tells us that the explosion is coming, we just don't know when. And that is what makes it unbearable to watch and impossible to look away from by the time the scene ends. Nothing dramatic has technically happened. No blood has been spilled, no punches thrown. But the audience feels shaken, uneasy, almost breathless. Why? Because the opening has told us the truth. This is not just another episode. This is the episode where silence will break into screams, where loyalty will snap under pressure, and where family will turn into enemies. And as the camera fades into the next scene, we realize we are not watching characters anymore. We are watching a tragedy unfold. One heartbeat at a time. Section 3. Major conflict. Turning point. Every great story has a moment where the tension finally breaks, where the storm that has been building for hours finally unleashes its fury. In Blood of My Blood, episode 10, that moment arrives like a knife cutting through silence. The major conflict doesn't creep in quietly like the opening. It crashes into the story with the force of betrayal, anger, and revelation. It's the turning point, the moment where the characters can no longer hide behind masks or lies. This is the point of no return. It begins with a confrontation that feels almost ordinary at first. A question is asked, a simple one that seems harmless. But the weight behind it transforms that question into an accusation. The camera lingers on the faces of those in the room. And in those expressions, we see the truth. Everyone has something to hide, and no one is ready to admit it. The air becomes electric. The words are sharp, but it's not just the dialogue that carries the power, it's the pauses between them. The silence after each response is heavier than the words themselves. We, as the audience, can feel it. Someone is about to break. And then it happens. The character we least expect is the one to speak up. Their voice cuts through the tension, shaking the room like thunder. What they reveal is not just a secret, it's a weapon. It's the truth that everyone suspected but no one dared to say aloud. The room erupts. Voices clash, tempers flare, and years of buried anger explode to the surface. This is not just a family argument, it is war disguised as conversation. The turning point isn't about who screams the loudest. It's about who finally tells the truth that can't be ignored. Episode 10 delivers this moment with precision. One character stands exposed, vulnerable, their deepest betrayal laid bare for all to see. Another character seizes the moment, twisting the knife deeper with words that cut like blades. And suddenly, alliances shift. The lines between friend and enemy blur. People who once stood together are now on opposite sides of the battlefield. The battlefield is the living room. The brilliance of this conflict lies in its unpredictability. We thought we knew who the villain was, who the hero was, who could be trusted. But episode 10 tears that certainty apart. In one exchange of words, the power dynamic flips upside down. The person we thought was untouchable is suddenly powerless. The one we underestimated stands taller, stronger, unafraid. This reversal shocks not just the characters but the audience as well, leaving us questioning everything we thought we knew. And here's where the writing of episode 10 shines the brightest. The conflict isn't just about the betrayal, it's about what that betrayal represents. It's about family tearing itself apart from the inside. It's about the promises of blood, of loyalty, of legacy being shattered in front of our eyes. The conflict isn't just external, it's deeply personal. Every character is fighting not only for survival, but for identity, for recognition, for the right to be heard in a family where silence has been the rule for far too long. The turning point also carries a physical weight. The voices rise, the gestures grow sharper, and finally, someone crosses the line. A hand slams against the table. A glass shatters on the floor. The room shakes with energy that can no longer be contained. The scene explodes into chaos, and at that exact moment, we understand. The story can no longer go back to what it was. This is the moment that will echo through every episode to come, when the dust settles from the shouting and accusations. There is no victory. No one leaves this confrontation unscathed. Everyone has lost something: trust, dignity, or control. But the greatest loss is the bond that once held them together. Blood may tie them by name, but after this conflict, they are no longer one family. They are rivals, enemies. Survivors trapped in the same cage. This is why episode 10 feels so devastating. It doesn't just give us a fight. It gives us a fracture. And fractures, unlike wounds, don't heal cleanly. They spread, they deepen, they break everything apart. The major conflict of episode 10 isn't just the centerpiece of the episode. It's the heartbeat of the entire season. And from this moment forward, nothing will ever be the same again. Section 4. Key character arcs. Every great drama is not built on action alone, but on the characters who carry the weight of the story. Blood of My Blood episode 10 understands this perfectly. The chaos and conflict only matter because of the people at the center of it. The ones who are forced to make choices they can't undo. In this episode, we see character arcs that don't just bend. They snap, twist, and transform in ways that leave us shaken. Let's look closely at the most important journeys. The first is the eldest sibling, the one who has always been the anchor of the family. For 9 episodes, they carried themselves with authority, projecting strength even when doubt gnawed at them from the inside. But episode 10 rips away that mask. In the heat of the confrontation, their control slips. For the first time, we see fear flash across their face. It's not fear of losing power, it's fear of being exposed, of being seen for who they really are. Their arc in this episode is tragic. The leader who once stood tall now appears broken, a figure whose authority has been questioned, whose secrets have been dragged into the light. The betrayal aimed at them becomes a mirror, forcing them to face the reality that their grip on the family has always been weaker than they believed. Then there is the younger sibling, the one who has always been overlooked, underestimated, treated like a shadow in someone else's story. In episode 10, their arc explodes in a way we've been waiting for all season. The years of silence, the quiet resentment, the hidden strength, all of it bursts out in this episode. Their voice cuts through the shouting, demanding to be heard, demanding to be seen. This is not the same character we met in the beginning. This is someone who has transformed, someone who finally steps out of the shadow and into the fire. Their decisions in this episode may not be noble, but they are powerful. For the first time, they are not reacting, they are acting, and in doing so, they shift the balance of power in ways no one expected. We can't ignore the matriarch or patriarch figure, the elder presence who looms over every decision. Their arc in episode 10 is haunting.